think that looks good. Cool. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you're having a great day. My name is Jake from Umbrella IT Services, and today we're going to be talking about network engineering with my good friend, Reza Akhavan. So if you could please leave a like on this video, it really helps Reza and I out. If you want to see more videos like this, then please subscribe to the channel. If you have a suggestion for a future video or have a guest that you would like to promote, please leave a comment below or email us at techtips@umbrellaitservices.ca. So now that that's out of the way, today we're going to be talking about network engineering. So network engineering is a crucial part of every organization that's often overlooked. Without a solid network, none of the electronic devices that we use every day would be able to function, and we would not be able to communicate or transmit data the way that we're used to. Reza has nearly 15 years of experience working with networks, and he's agreed to take some time out of his very busy schedule today to help us break down some of the fundamentals of networking, how you can get started with networking, and what difference having a good network engineer means for your organization. So I'd like to give Reza a big thank you for coming on and talking with us today about the following topics, such as what is network engineering, how can a network engineer stay up to date with the constantly changing technology landscape, what effects COVID-19 will have on network engineers and networking in general, and we'll also review some fundamental tools that every network engineer should have in their tool belt. So now again, that's out of the way. Reza, thank you very much for coming on with us today. How's your day going?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
That's good. No worries. You have a busy day today, or what's going on?
Yeah, well, it's always crazy busy. Always something new.
Yeah.
That's the name of the game.
Absolutely. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, just like why you got into the field, what is networking, what experience you have in it?
Yeah, of course. I started as tech support, which is, I guess, a very familiar spot for people in the field. That's where you get your foot in the door, you go in, you start doing some stuff hands-on, and then you would find what's the field that is exactly the type of work you like to do or learn more about.
Mhm.
So I started working as tech support for a hosting company, and obviously a hosting company involves all kind of infrastructure that needs to be looked after, starting from their servers that are hosting the websites, having a colo or managing their own data center, the whole 9 yards. So what I found interesting for myself was more networking, and that comes from, I guess, personal preference. I think networks are more predictable.
Mm-hmm.
And although I like surprises in life here and there, but I don't like surprises at work. They happen regardless. So network is more predictable than, for me at least, than managing server infrastructure. So that's how I got kind of gravitated towards learning about networks.
Yeah, I can see behind you there. You've done a little bit of research.
Exactly.
So what is network engineering for people that don't know?
Well, in order to say what's network engineering, because this is a question I often get asked, even from people who work at the same company with me.
Yeah.
But they're in a different department. They're like, okay, what is it exactly that you do every day? In order to answer that question, we have to first establish what's a network. And a network is kind of self-explanatory. You know, the same way of that you have a network of friends, we have a network of roads in our cities. So network, when it comes to our profession, it's about all the connections between different service providers, between different users from your home to your offices. So this network of cables that are across the city, they have to be managed, they have to be maintained, they have to be upgraded. You need to add to them. So this network, with all the things that have to get added to it, both physically and logically, are more often than not planned by large groups of people. Network engineers are a part of those teams involved with this.
That makes sense. So when it comes down to what a network does exactly day to day for you, you're basically just connecting different devices and allowing them to talk to each other.
Yeah, that's a fair point. It's all about, well, with my first part of answer, I touched the fact that how they're built. But also now you have to think about having them maintained, if they're secured or not, if they're redundant or not, if you have enough options to service X amount of data going across the line. And these are all talking in bigger terms and from the ISP perspective. But network, even if you look at your office, you want to have a firewall at your office that is capable of handling X number of VPN connections because you have X number of staff.
Yeah.
So network engineering is basically the work of planning for all these, doing the implementation, and then looking after it, making sure it's working for everyone else.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you're not only working on things like an internal Wi-Fi in a business, making sure that people's laptops can connect to the server, making sure they can connect to the printer. You're also making things happen like when people are working from home, they need to be able to connect to the firewall, which then connects to the printer or connects to their desktop. So that makes a lot of sense. How do you keep up with all of this stuff? So I know that obviously 5G is a big topic everyone's talking about. I know Wi-Fi 6 just came out recently. So how do you usually stay up to date with this kind of stuff?
That's basically a part of our job. If some people have this perspective that, okay, I go to school, I learn something, and then I go start working, and the experience I'm earning as I work is going to be enough. But there are many professions, let's say dentists, they often have to go attend certain classes. I don't know, I'm not a dentist,
Yeah.
just making it up,
Yeah.
once every X amount of years, that they have to go attend classes, learn new things that are in their industry. Same story is true about network, or maybe even more, because these new technologies are just getting rolled out and they need people who understand them. They can deploy them properly, they can maintain them. So it never stops. Once you accept that this is your profession, you have to be prepared for dedicating time out of your free time to think that you think, oh, okay, I'm going to enjoy myself. You have to have the passion and you have to enjoy learning about things.
That makes
You
sense.
cannot do everything on the spot.
So would you say that the certifications that you have are, like, again, you have a large number behind you. Do you think those have been more
These are the
beneficial?
books, not my certifications.
Pardon?
These are the books for them.
There you go.
Yeah.
So do you think that the books have been more beneficial? Is it the real world experience? What do you think has been the number one contributor for helping you just stay up to date with this stuff?
That's a very good question, and also a hot topic. Many people debate about this, and there's no right or wrong. Many people say that certifications is not something that I would care about. I don't like to keep renewing something. If I know something, I can show it to my employer or to my clients, and they will find the confidence after a while when they see how it works. And that is true, but one of the beauties of being certified and keeping them updated is the fact that, for example, I got my CCNP certification when it was the old model of Cisco. And the CCNP route switch certification that I took was very heavy on routing and switching topics. But now they just rolled out, and by just I mean last February, it came out, and now the new CCNP route switch doesn't exist. It's called Enterprise, and it has a lot of software-defined networking in it. It has a lot of automation. So it's actually a blessing in disguise. People might be bothered by the fact that they have to renew them or they have to study and renew them again. But that's exactly how you can then keep up with the market, and you would learn, okay, now software-defined networking is bigger than 5 years ago. I have to learn it, renew my certificate. That's a very good way. Also, it would push you. It would give you a goal. It would give you the discipline that you need to sit down. Although you had a long day at work, you're going to dedicate X amount of hours a night or a week to study, to learn something new. It's a great tool. I'm all for certification. I'm in that camp. Some people are just against it.
Yeah, I'm a big self-taught guy, so that's always been, I think, a good reason why you and I get along so well, is because you have all the formal training and all the certifications, and I have these wacky ideas that I've kind of hacked together. So I know sometimes I'll say stuff and you'll be like, what did this guy just say? But it works.
It's a double-edged sword. You shouldn't always fall on something you read in a book.
Yeah.
Sometimes the practical version is different. Sometimes you are supposed to think outside the box and be innovative and come up with something that you couldn't find in any book. And people like yourself that have been doing it for a long time and learn things by experience have their own advantages.
Yeah.
And that's why teamwork is better than doing things on your own.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that you've recently moved on. I know that, full disclosure, we used to work together. I'll throw that on the table. And now you're more of a solo tech in a giant corporation. I know obviously you have a team going on, but do you prefer the idea of just having a network engineer alone? Do you like having that managed services environment where there's more people to draw information from? Like, what do you usually prefer? Because again, you've got about 15 years of experience. So what has been your preference over the course of your career?
I personally prefer working in a bigger team.
Hmm.
The reason is you can always bounce idea off other people who are in the situation, know the background, and they know where we're going. We are trying to get to.
Mm-hmm.
So it's great to have a team of people. And
Oh, I think we lost your video there.
yeah.
There you are.
So basically, being in a team has a lot of benefits. When you're working on your own, even if you're second guessing yourself, even if you're not sure, if it's about a technology that is very new, it is kind of hard to pull the trigger or be 100% sure. So being in a team has definitely a lot of benefits.
That makes sense. I think as well, like another reason, because a lot of people argue, right? Like, oh, like you said, oh, I've got my CCNA, I've got my CCNP, CCIE, all these things. But then I see these guys, and I speak with some of them, and that's all they do. They're not on like I'm a big YouTube guy, so I like Network Chuck. I like going on Twitter, and I have my little forums and communities that I like to go on, and I follow these personalities, and they're always saying like, oh, today I learned this from Cisco, or today I was on the job, and turns out that this sort of firewall solution really works well, whereas this one doesn't, whatever, right? And do you recommend that people do the iterative thing, which is kind of what I do, where they're learning bit by bit? Or do you think it's better to just kind of jump from CCNA to CCNP? My personal opinion would be that it really depends on your job. Like if you're someone and you're an independent engineer, or you're just working as one kind of gear in the cog of a business, it is better to go with the formal training, because your job is to do one thing. You know what I mean? You have one organization you're making sure works. You have a very limited stack of technology, and you should be learning as much as possible about that technology with a little bit of peripheral stuff, obviously. But you should be really focusing on, if you're a Cisco stack, or if you're a Ubiquiti or Unify stack, or a MikroTik stack, whatever, you should be digging down into those certifications and those programs. What do you think about that? Do you think that's an environment
I would
thing?
say uh, it's best to have a balance of good things. It's wrong always to shut the door on one option,
Mm-hmm.
be 100% focused on one thing, and then find out that, oh, that wasn't everything I needed.
Yeah.
So I think there's certifications from many vendors, and I'm not saying that they don't have value, but the thing is, when you are going to get certified, it is for a couple of reasons. First of all, to uh, learn something that you didn't know.
Yeah.
That should be the main reason. You see many people get that wrong. They go after them for the wrong reason. Second reason for it should be to help you have a better job, a better position professionally, and set yourself up for the coming years, given what is the trend in the network or servers or whatever is the environment you're working in. Now, if you look at people going after random certifications because it's happening at their company, that's completely justifiable. If you don't have any goal and you just want to learn something, you're always better off with learning the fundamentals, because once you learn the fundamentals of routing and switching, for example, it doesn't really matter if your switch is Cisco or if it's Arista or Ubiquiti or HP. Switching is the same, VLANs are the same, everything would be the same. It's just how you would implement it on that particular vendor platform. So it is very important to make those steps planned ahead of time. Get a certification, absorb some information, feel comfortable with it, at least think that you're comfortable with it,
Yeah.
and then try to have it in production network. And you try that, and then you have to. Not all people can afford Cisco, so you end up with people buying cheaper switches or this vendor, that vendor. and then you learn doing the same thing on those. And that's what you could go and write the exams and have no job experience, and you might even pass. I think it's very unlikely, but you might even pass. Maybe you're great at studying, but that will not translate into you being a successful network engineer at work. So it's great to take your time, learn things, study, try to implement them, try to expand your knowledge, go dive a bit deeper than what you would find on a blueprint of a certification exam. And then once you're fully confident in things you've learned, you can move on, you can add things to it, you can go for the next level. That's how I've been approaching it, and it served me well.
I think that's really good advice, especially for new network engineers or people that are kind of getting started with their careers. You mentioned that it's a good idea to go back and kind of just learn these things iteratively. I think it's really important that people kind of understand that when they pick something, have a goal in mind and work towards that goal. So if you're going to be trying to be a head engineer somewhere, you want to be a network engineer at an MSP, you just want to get a cushy consulting job. There's a million different things you can do. And especially with all this COVID stuff going on, there's going to be, I think, a tremendous increase in work for network engineers specifically. But I think the good advice that you brought up for the new guys is learn the fundamentals. Because a lot of people, I know a lot of people ask me all the time, hey man, I want to get into IT. Like, I've seen that you've gone from fixing phone screens in a bedroom closet to working with all these large companies. Like, how did you do it? What's the secret? And then they do a little bit of Googling, and of course, Cisco's number one because their marketing budget. And I tell them, you're not going to work in a lot of Cisco environments when you're starting off. It's a lot better to just take a CompTIA Plus, take a Network Plus, learn the fundamentals, and then you're going to be able to apply those in a valuable way for your clients. So it doesn't matter if you're able to walk into any sort of business and they're only Cisco, you're going to be in trouble if you're a Unify or an HP or, like you mentioned, these other brands. It's really important you can walk in there and you can go, oh, okay, your printer's not working because it's on a different VLAN behind a firewall, or you've got a firewall rule blocking it, or whatever the problem is. You're going to be able to go, okay, I understand that the subnet that you're on is different than the subnet you're communicating with, and when I checked your firewall, it's actually blocking communication between those subnets. Let me fix that. It doesn't matter that you walk in there and you go, well, I've actually got this certification with HP, and I'm only actually able to work on this HP device. Sorry, I can't help you. Do you have any other advice for newbies just starting off in the field?
Lab a lot.
Yeah. That's really good advice.
Yeah. Every minute that you spend at home, you are comfortable, you know that things you're changing are not going to have impact on anyone's business. This is not going to put your job on the line. And you would have the luxury of trying all kind of features of a particular technology that you wouldn't necessarily need it at work or for that particular client. So when you lab it at home, and it used to be very hard. I remember I had to drive all the way to Seattle to pick up Cisco devices because I couldn't find that many of them in Vancouver. It was a huge hassle for me to put together a very cheap home lab. But now it has changed a lot. Now you can actually have a virtualized environment, and that environment would give you everything. Like, a very good place for people to look at is EVE-NG. That's EVE-NG. Just Google EVE-NG. They have a free community version. You set that up and you have a lab on your computer. You don't even need that much resources, basically, if you're not aiming to run big labs.
Yeah.
And when you start, you have no reason to run big labs. So try to set up a good home lab. And even in my work environment, you can use it as a proof of concept environment. You can use it as your sandbox environment. I always talk to people, and from their home lab, I can say how much they're actually interested in what they're doing.
That makes sense. What do you recommend people get started with the home lab? Because what I usually end up doing is just I want to have just a wireless connectivity, like some sort of WLAN. I want to have a couple different VLANs running on a firewall or on a switch. But what would you say is a really good way to just kind of get started and start tinkering around. Because a lot of people, like myself included, when I was very first getting started, I didn't know what to do. And it's very similar to what you said. Like, I was looking online, I was dead broke, and I was like, I can't go buy, even though it's only $600, I can't go buy a $600 Dell server to host all this stuff. And I don't know, I don't even know where to begin. So, do you recommend anywhere people can learn about setting up a lab? Do you have any recommendations on how to set up a lab?
Absolutely, yeah. There are very good options that are free. If you're going to study for your Cisco certification, you can just download this software called Packet Tracer. And Packet Tracer used to be something that you could only download from their student version account, but now they've made it available to everyone. You can just go on, register, put your email address and information, you can download. Packet Tracer is great if you want to learn working with Cisco devices. Now, if you're interested in having a hybrid environment, which is more realistic, again, as you said it earlier, it is very unlikely for you to walk in and everything is Cisco.
Yeah.
And even if that's the case, you're just going to be a one-trick pony, and you want to avoid being that. So go either to EvenG or GNS3. GNS3 has been around for a long time as well, and you can virtualize pretty much any vendor on it. It's not just Cisco. And setting up that lab would actually give you a very intense experience for the first time if you're not familiar with it. And it's great because it's a great experience. You learn how to set up a virtualized environment, host different vendor devices, and upload images, create virtual machines. And once you do that and have that environment ready, you can start with doing small things. As you said, let's set up a LAN connection with a couple of subnets. Start with one VLAN. You're comfortable with that, get to 2, get to 3. But before doing all that, you have to learn the very fundamentals of network. And for that, any of the certifications, Network Plus or even CCNA, all these certifications first start with vendor neutral information, all about TCP/IP stack. And when I say this, it's not even only about people who are new to this. Even if you are a seasoned engineer, your best tool is your knowledge of the TCP/IP stack and how you can understand where each of these technologies is landing in. It will help you to build better solutions. It will help you to troubleshoot when things go wrong. So just spend time. It's probably the drier part of your studying, but once you understand it, you would appreciate doing that for years to come.
Yeah. And to be completely honest as well, I think that you mentioned the more experienced people. In my experience personally, the only and you and I kind of stumbled on this together. At least you helped me stumble onto this. The main difference between a senior network engineer and a junior is how they deal with the stress and how they deal with the pressure. Because, like you said, when you're first setting up that routing and that virtualized environment, you're going to get that dread. And every engineer and every tech guy knows what I'm talking about, where that just blanket of just ugh comes over you, and you got to be able to just go, you know what, fine, fuck it, I'll power through. We'll figure this out, we'll make it work, and it's gonna be fine, because like you said, you're not live on someone's business. You're not live in an environment where if they go down, you're gonna lose $250,000 an hour. It's not the situation you're in. You're at home. You're messing around. Maybe your girlfriend's gonna get pissed because the Wi-Fi goes down if you don't set up a lab. But that's the worst case scenario. You know what I mean? So you're out some flowers, but whatever. So I think it's really important to focus on that for the new guys, because I obviously, being in an MSP space, we rub shoulders with a lot of the newer guys in the field, and people that are 5 years in, that kind of stuff. And I've had a couple folks that are only a couple years in, and they go, what's the secret? Like, how do you know when you're really ready? And I go, okay, what happens when you fuck something up? What happens when you break something? And do you get that frozen thing, or do you go, okay, here we go again? And I think that's the main difference.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What are some common challenges that you've been facing when you're studying and when you're trying to advance in your career? Do you have any advice for anybody that's kind of hit a rut, if they're just kind of getting their Network Plus, or if they're trying to get a CCNA, or if they're trying to get a CCIE or a CCNP? Do you have any advice for those people if they're struggling or just getting started with these things?
Absolutely. I would actually relate a lot to that because studying these technologies, they have all kind of details. When you're learning about something, let's say a routing protocol, you can just learn how to set it up. There are a few commands. You can copy paste it off of any forum. There is some sample out there.
Yeah.
Or you can actually, that's the far end of it. Let's go to the very polarized other end of this. That is you sitting down reading RFCs. And for people who are not familiar with the term, RFCs are standards that are basically used by all vendors. RFCs are requests for comment, and they often come from IEEE. And when a new protocol is being rolled out, let's say a routing protocol, Wi-Fi 6 that you just mentioned earlier, these would have their own RFCs. They would define it. What are the specifications? What are the technical things that would actually make this protocol work? And then vendors want to use that. They go use those RFCs, use those information, and then they build a device that is actually working with other vendors. That's how the operation, the interoperability between different vendors work. You can go sit down, read those RFCs. That's too much. That's not needed. But when you are trying to learn something, it's better for you to learn the fundamentals, be sure that you're dealing with all of that. And despite feeling that, is this, you would ask yourself, is this really necessary? Do I really have to know this? You would appreciate it at some point in your career that you actually took the time and learned. I'm not saying go sit down, read the RFCs and driest documentation you can find, but don't cheat yourself out of information either.
100%.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those situations where, and this has happened to me a lot, where I've been trying to figure out a problem with a client's network or with their server or something like that, and I'm 3.5 hours into it and I'm getting nowhere. And then you walk by and you're like, you check this, and then you go to the water, and by the time I come back, I'm just like, son of a bitch, like, how did you, and it's because you read that one thing on that one forum from 2007, or you read that one thing in that RFC handbook, so I think that it is really important to not cheat yourself on that kind of stuff. And another way that I kind of overcome that stuff is I go on YouTube and I find communities. So one guy that I found to be really practical, I don't know if you agree, is Eli, the computer guy, and he's very good for fundamentals. I think he has a 4-hour seminar on TCP/IP and 7 layers of networking. Yeah, so he was huge probably 6 years ago when I was starting the business. Actually, I would call him my first mentor. And he cuts through everything. He's like, this is not what you need to know. I've got 20 years experience in the field. Here's the fundamentals. Here's how you can get your first client. Here's what people are going to actually ask you to do. And he cuts through everything, which was really great for me. I wish that I coupled that with like a CCNA or something like that, so I could have had kind of a little bit of a formal training as well. But I usually go on to people like him. Someone like Network Chuck is also very good. You've turned me on to him. And having them kind of demo stuff in the clickbaity ways is really helpful. And I kind of look at what they're doing, and then I go, okay, well, what would a small business want, or what would my target want? Let's say it's a big corporation or whatever. And then I can sit at home and I can go, okay, well, a small business would want to have Wi-Fi that's public and private. They would want to have a network that's public and private. They would want to have a firewall. They would want to have switches. And then I can go ahead and design a network for 15 people in a business instead of, like you said, trying to grind through an RFC manual for 4 hours going, why the hell am I learning this? And at the end of the day, when you've put in your 8 hours, you can go, hey, I'm halfway done my setup. I've got a fully functional private Wi-Fi system. I've got a fully functional 2 VLAN network that I built up myself, And I think that's really important for people that are starting. And even I think on your level, what do you think? Like when you're at the tippy top or getting up to the tippy top of things, what are some things that keep you motivated as a more experienced engineer?
Well, you have to accept something, and that's true about, again, there are many of the things we talk about are not necessarily about network engineering. You don't know what you don't know. So you have to be honest with yourself and put the time into those spots that you know are your weak links and focus on them. Also, don't take uh, guesses or just don't do things with the hope of getting it done in production networks. Again, that goes back to value of labbing things up at home, trying them, and be confident with things that you are claiming you're capable of doing. For me, whenever I uh, face a task or a project, and I know that this particular device, I'm not 100% sure about all its features. I try to spin it up in my lab. I try to set up even a smaller version of that network, see how it goes, what are the things that I'm not sure about them. And that would actually give me a reason to now sit down and study about something that I didn't know about. Like right now, the new trend is that you hear from many people is cloud, cloud, cloud.
Yeah.
And I say this, I know it's a source of debate, and probably many people are not gonna like me for saying this, but this is just marketing. Cloud is internet. It's been around. There was a time that would say, okay, this is a data center, this is an office. Now they say, oh, this is Amazon. Yeah, sure, that Amazon cloud service is still a data center. It is still following the same structure as any other network would, but they are giving you this certification, so you are basically certified, you are trusted with managing their platform.
Yeah.
So you hear all these trends, and if you have a strong fundamental, if you did the homework, and if you learn things the way they're supposed to be learned, then you would not have an issue to go through their documentation or their training or look at few things or try their trial versions and figure it out.
Yeah.
But if you've been cutting corners and you've been just trying to get certified to get a X amount of dollars a year as your salary, then yeah, the trend is going to change. It will change. It's a guarantee. And then what are you going to do then? Start from zero, learn that new platform or whatever is trendy at that time? That's not how it works. It's at least not a good long-term plan.
I don't know, man. I got some friends who only know Microsoft DOS, and they're doing very well. So yeah, I think that's completely correct, because like the cloud thing, like you said, it is all marketing nonsense. And I think that a big important thing is to note that OneDrive's great, but what do you do when it's not syncing on your local computer? You know what I mean? Like Amazon cloud services are great. What happens when your phone system that's hosted in the cloud stops connecting to your local phones? What are you going to do? You know what I mean? If you're only able to say, well, I can log into the Amazon panel and I can make sure that the server's working okay. It's like, okay, that's great. I can also log into a Windows system and tell that that's great. How are you going to break through the firewall here? How are you going to do it in a way where you're not going to get this business hit by ransomware? How are you going to let these systems communicate in a trusted fashion where it's actually going to function? And people go, what? And it's like, okay, did you set up port forwarding? Well, yeah, okay. So now you want everyone inside of this business to lose everything they've ever worked on because of ransomware and port scanning? And it's like, you know what I mean? There's a lot of things where, and I should probably slow it down a little bit, but I know in case there's new people listening, but there's a lot of things people do, like you said, that are very platform specific, where they completely ignore the fundamentals. And I think it's really important for people to understand, again, get your CompTIA plus. You need to understand what a Windows computer is. What is a Mac computer? Then you can get into the network stuff. What is a window? What does SMB look like? What's SMB1? What's SMB2? What's SMB3? I remember we had a client have I think it was like their printer or their files went down for, I don't remember, like 2 or 3 days. And I had two different techs look at it. This is before you joined us. And it was a company on the North Shore. And I went on site and I was like, SMB1 is disabled. It was scanning files from a printer. No one could get it to scan over. So I went in and I was like, SMB1 is disabled on this server. Why is SMB1 disabled? And the tech that had worked on it was like, well, I read in best practices that malware spreads through SMB1, so I cut it off. And I was like, okay, you've also disabled like 75% of the functions in this office by doing that. And then it turns out licensing stuff wasn't working, and there's a bunch of problems going on. But again, because he'd heard from this one platform that SMB1 was bad, he cut it off. And he didn't know that, oh shit, I've terminated licensing software. I've terminated file scanning from printers. I've cut off a lot of Mac OS sharing. So it's very crazy how a lot of people just get hyper focused on this marketing stuff and they completely disregard the fundamentals. So I'm glad that you brought that up.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
And also, side note,
yeah,
that guy who did that will never do that again.
exactly.
So that's the value of being hands-on and trying things in a controlled environment before cutting off 70% of business functions.
Yeah, 100%. And that's why I think that I've been so fortunate is I've fallen on my face a million times behind closed doors. You know what I mean? I've made a tiny mistake at 2 a.m. No one notices. I do my quality control testing, and then I go, okay, I can't do that. So you'll say, like, let's say when you and I were working together and you were designing a project for us, I would be able to pipe in every once in a while and either contribute or critique something. I would not know why. Like if you were to say, okay, well, why won't that work? I couldn't say, well, layer 4 of the networking structure means this or that, but I could say, well, because I did that once and then I got punched in the head. You know what I mean? So it's a mix. You know, it's a mix of getting the formal training and the real world training. So
exactly.
yeah. What do you think the future looks for everybody? I know you mentioned the cloud stuff, but I know the COVID thing is stressing a lot of people out in other industries. I've been busier than ever. Have you been busier than ever?
Yes, it's crazy. Well, the company I work for, they do both ISP and MSP services. We're not known for the ISP because it's less for end users and home connection and more for offices and
sorry to interrupt. So that's internet service provider and managed services provider for people who
exactly.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No worries.
Yeah. And then this COVID situation actually showed many business owners that they should trust their employees with working from home. Now, what are the benefits of this? This is a bad situation globally, and it's hurting many businesses. And it would actually, at the end, cost all of us, not only business owners. The job market's going to be hit. Even now that they're opening everything back up, there are many businesses that think, okay, maybe we can manage, and they're going to file bankruptcy in a few months. I hope the situation is going to get better, but the only good that came out of this was that it showed business owners they don't really need to pay rent for a place necessarily. They don't have to have everyone coming to the office every day. People don't need to drive their cars as often as they do. They don't have to commute to some specific place to take care of their responsibilities. And all this would be actually a boost to IT services and the level of IT needs in businesses. Now we have many clients that they cannot have their employees at their offices. They come to us and they ask how we can help them to set up VPN for them if we are going to host their servers for them, so they don't have to have anything physical at their office. And once they take care of that, what's the use of having the lease and renting that space, right?
Yeah.
So it's a double-edged sword. We've been caught with it in a bad way up to this point, but now businesses can use this opportunity to see that, oh, everything was working just fine. People pulled through, they did their job. So maybe now we should look at having hybrid environments, try to have people work remotely as much as possible. It's a good thing. It's good for environment. It's good for our cities. Overall, I would say it's a positive thing.
Yeah, I agree. As a network engineer, do you think you're going to be in more demand, less demand?
Yeah, well, now I remember the last question you asked before I give you that answer. And the future of network engineering, as with many other ever-changing IT fields, is going to be more of automation, more of learning how to code. It was not a requirement for a network engineer when I started to be familiar with automation, know Python or do Ansible or automate services. The environments were not as big either. Now it's a common thing for people to have a hybrid environment, have Amazon services, spin up X number of servers that they need to manage, right? Everything is changing now. In addition to that, Dockers are changing the landscape a lot. Now you can afford to have a much more complicated and versatile virtualized environments that you couldn't do because the previous virtualization was based on chopping up your hardware.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're chopping up your kernel, your operating system. Now you can have many more Dockers than you could ever imagine having virtualized servers. So all these things are making the environments to run on uh, multiple number of nodes, multiple number of servers. Now you can have many Dockers. What are you going to do? Are you going to manage the network individually for each of them? Now you need to know automation. Now you need to learn Python and Ansible. Now you have to manipulate your network from one point on many different devices. So that's the trend. That's something that I personally lack in my toolbox, and I'm working on. And I'm glad actually it would give me a reason to sit down and dedicate some time and study again. It's not only about learning that technology, it would keep you on your toes. It would teach you how to be on a schedule, how to have discipline, how to have time management skills. And these are things that after learning that technology would help you at your very job you do day to day.
Yeah.
Being disciplined, being good with your time management, taking that I don't know last minute of productivity out of your day when you really need it.
Yeah. And you mentioned that I think that's all great advice. You mentioned that you're kind of lacking in that field, but I know that you are unique in a lot of ways in the industry. What are some ways that you kind of recommend people move forward with that kind of stuff? Like how would you explain you approach your projects, and what advice do you have for people that are kind of approaching something new? Like you said, you're going to be approaching this coding stuff. How do you approach any project that you're working on?
Well, if it's a project for a client, if it's happening at work, people should remember the most important part of any project is the client who's paying for that project.
Mm-hmm.
So you
That's
should
very
always.
important.
What's that?
Oh, that's very important. I see so many texts just blaze right by that. So thank you
That's
for
how
bringing
you're
that
at work. So basically, that's top of the list. So it is always important to have a complete understanding of what environment they're trying to have.
Mm-hmm.
What are the goals? What are the criteria that would make this project successful versus making it unsuccessful? And then you would be given a budget.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes uh, we both know because we've dealt with clients and we've been actually going through this together. Sometimes people don't know that this money is needed to be spent.
Yeah.
They overlook and they're like, okay, why should we spend this amount of money on our network? We were doing just fine with a Netgear switch.
Yeah.
And the modem from our
Yeah, your favorite
right?
brand. It's your number one brand.
my favorite brand, yeah. But then when you explain to them that how much they're gonna save down the road, or when you compare for them having security versus not having security, how much damage getting ransomware would actually have on their business? Can they afford to go through that? Or sometimes as simple as they ask me, do we really need internet connection from two different service providers? And I ask them, okay, having a second internet connection would cost you $1,000 a year. If you lose your internet connection for 2 days, for even one day, for 6 hours, what's the cost for you and for your business? So you're given this project, and sometimes you have to have this back and forth. It is not about squeezing the client or forcing them to pay more. Sometimes they want to put more money, and you have to tell them, hey, you're just overspending, you're splashing, you don't need to do this.
Yeah.
I can do this with half this money.
Yeah. I have a big problem with techs that do that because it makes it really hard for the rest of us to do our job. Like I've come into some businesses and you've come with me and we've tried to explain to them like, yes, here's the price. Like here's what we're getting it for. There's no margin here. And they've just been screwed over so many times that they don't have any trust left. You know what I mean? Because what we do to a lot of people does kind of seem like black magic. And a lot of those techs that do come in, a lot of these businesses that do come in and they take advantage of that. And it makes it really difficult for all of us to kind of get what we need to do. And to touch really quickly on one other thing before we continue is regarding the cost thing that you mentioned. For example, we've installed a server for a health clinic, and you helped us replace their network, I believe. And since they've done that, 15 of their computers were, well, actually, honestly, I think we had 11 computers scheduled to be replaced. All of them, except for 2, are now working flawlessly. So they now don't necessarily have to urgently replace 15 workstations. All of them are scheduled to be replaced, but they don't need to necessarily spend the money to replace 11 workstations now, because they spent a little bit extra money on that server and a little bit of extra money on that network. So I think it's really important, like you said, do the cost value proposition, listen to the client, talk to the client, hear what they're saying. A lot of guys just get sucked into this best practices, like get cool toys to play with. And sometimes you'll walk into a place and you'll say, what were you quoted previously? And they'll say, oh, well, this guy wants to put in this system or that system. And you go, well, that's, how big are you? How big are you trying to get? Like, what's your roadmap over the next couple of years? And people will just say, well, we're trying to hit 25 people. And it's like, okay, I don't think that you really need to have this catalyst in here. You know what I mean? I don't think you need to have a $900,000 network infrastructure and server combination for this $1 million a year business. Maybe you need to actually just downgrade to something that's more in the $50,000, $100,000 range. And because you listened and because you told the client what they actually needed to hear, that makes a huge difference. I think that's one of the reasons why we've done so well and why I like working with you so much, is because you'll just cut through the BS with people. You know, we'll leave a meeting and you'll go, oh, I wish we could have worked with the catalyst, or I wish we could have worked with that shiny new toy, but it's not what they need, you know?
Yeah.
So I think it's important to touch on that stuff. I just wanted to bring attention to those quickly. Sorry. Please continue.
No. And I don't know what you said that this came to my mind. I want to add it before we move on, because it's very important. When you're explaining things to a client,
yeah,
we have to make sure that we are not throwing technical terms at them.
Yes.
It will make him uncomfortable. It will make him feel stupid. It would take away from that conversation. We always have to have a good analogy, something that they can understand and they can relate to. And through that, just show them the concept of what you're trying to put together as a solution for them. So back to what you were saying with their network infrastructure and having the good server. Now, if they were not spending money on their network, it's like buying a car, parking it in your parking, and then you don't spend money on fixing your driveway, and then you don't have a driveway to go out and drive it on the road and enjoy it. It is exactly like that. So when you give tangible examples to people, they would be able to follow you. They're like, oh, okay, so this firewall that you say I need here is exactly like my driveway, so I can drive my Ferrari out and enjoy it. Otherwise, my $400,000 car has to sit here because I can't even get it on the road.
Yeah, I think that's really important. The analogy thing really helps, because again, like, if you can't explain that stuff to folks in language they understand, they're not going to get it. Like, if you start talking about the 7 layers of networking or whatever, people are just going to tune out. You know, even some MSP business owners and some technical salespeople, they're not going to follow you. But if you're like, hey, you know, why isn't this working? Oh, okay, well, you see, your VLAN is kind of like your bedroom and your living room, and you got this wall between them, and it's really well insulated. So if you're trying to talk to someone and they're in the living room and you're in the bedroom, it doesn't matter how loud you yell, they're not going to hear you. Oh, okay, I get it. They don't need to understand you've created 2 digital networks and all this other stuff, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the analogy thing is very powerful.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. What else do I have here? So what are some common mistakes that you usually see while people are making networks? Speaking of using the analogies and not speaking technically to people, what are some common mistakes you see network engineers making, either while they're designing things or while they're studying, or just general mistakes?
Yeah. Well, in designing things, I would say, being in MSP for years now, I get to see the work of other network engineers and network administrators, whether it's now us taking over and trying to improve it, or if it's broken and they couldn't fix it and they had to bring you in. It's very polarized. 2 things that stands out to me is that they either overcomplicate things or they go lazy and make it super simple. So let's say that it's an office of 5 people. Some network engineer was just bored, flexing their muscles. They did 200 VLANs for an office of 5 people.
Yeah.
Right? That's bad. And you would be surprised how often we find those things. Because I'm not gonna say that it is always the case, but sometimes they do make it complicated. So they're the only people who can understand it.
Yeah.
Which is very bad business practice.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not that hard to find.
Yeah.
And the other version is that having something super simple. That's another common mistake that I see, that they try to avoid that situation and they try to make things simple to hand off to someone else. They make it too simple that is just kind of stealing from the functions that you really need it. So these are two common things that I see at work. In terms of studying, something I see that is very common by people is that they just study things for the sake of passing the exam. And we touched on it a little earlier when we were talking about certification and studying. Do not do that, because you would cheat yourself out of very reason that you are studying that. Instead of going out and having fun with your friends, watching a movie, spending time with your significant other, you sit down, you study, but instead of digging deep and doing the right thing and blabbing and trying things and truly learning the fundamentals, you just try to be prepared to answer multiple choice questions. That's not good. So that's a common thing that I see with people studying. And I would say the only way to avoid it is to have a better perspective of where you're going to use it in future.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's all really good advice. I think that's a really good advice, man. Like thinking about the plurality of people, because I won't say it's a majority, but there's a plurality of these individual technicians that kind of turn themselves into God at their organization. And like you said, like you walk in, you got 5 people employed in the business. There's 5 VLANs. Maybe there's 10 VLANs because it's one for each of the guys' laptops and desktops, and there's all these crazy firewall rules and all these hoops to jump through, and it's like, why? Like, I get it, but like, why? Like, why did you do this? And it's like, well, I was bored, and I was learning some new things.
Oh, they never say I was bored.
Well, yeah, they always say get out of here. But yeah, I think that's great advice, and it's really important again to make sure you, like you said earlier, you've got a lab for those things. You don't need to make it overly complicated at a client site. It's all about balancing. And again, listen to the client, figure out what they're trying to do, and then give them a solution. If it's going to take you 4 hours to do what they really need, then do 4 hours. And if you think of something where they're saying, oh, we want to do a VPN solution and we want to do this, we want to do that, and you're the type of person that wants to be a little bit more comprehensive, and you want to say, okay, you know what, let's add in like some sort of cert to add an extra layer of security of this. You can talk to them. You can say, look, I can do this. It's going to take me an extra 2 hours right now. I'm going to have to come in once a year, refresh the cert. It's going to cost you $500 a year. What do you think? And then they'll go, well, why? And you go, well, ransomware costs an average business $116,000 a year, 2018. Average cost the U.S. 800-something thousand last year. And you're a bigger business. Maybe you need this. If it's a one-person entrepreneur, they're going to be fine. You know what I mean? They don't need to have all this crazy stuff. So I think it really ties back to, again, making sure you have the right tools set up, making sure that you have the right community set up, making sure you're listening to the clients. And I think mistakes are how you're going to learn in this field, I think. And you want to make the right mistakes, like you said. You want to be, if you're losing time with your friends, your family, your significant others, it should be worth it. And it should be taking steps towards a goal that's going to help you build a better life for yourself and fire that passion for technology that you have, and not be seen as this thing for you to resent. Because I've seen a lot of people in this industry later in life have a lot of resentment, and they're very bitter towards other people. And it's very unfortunate to see people go that way, because it's IT, right? If you're doing things right, people are going to ask, what the hell am I paying for? And if you're doing things wrong, people are going to ask, what the hell am I paying for? And it's a very thankless job. But at the end of the day, I think that people like you and I just have this passion for it. And it's what we love to do. And I don't know what I would do if I couldn't work with people like yourself and work for the clients that I have. And I just think that it's really good advice, man. What are some tools that you recommend everybody use just in their tool belt day to day? or if they're wanting to learn more things?
One thing that I don't see many people use, or at least in MSP environment,
Hmm.
is using the free tools that you can find out there. Tools like Wireshark, for example. And the best way to start being comfortable with it is, again, using it in lab environment. The traffic is very limited. You know what you're supposed to find on that wire. And then you Wireshark, you see, all the headers, you see all the payload of the packet. You can just go through different things that are making that traffic. And one day, when all the doors are closed, that rainy day that some network is down and you don't know what's going on, that tool in your toolbox will actually come and help you. Being comfortable with going over packet captures, especially with all the new firewalls in the market. And there are many good firewalls. Surprisingly, there was a time that you didn't have that many options in terms of firewalls. It was not something that was built by many vendors. For a long time, people had, I'm just getting sidetracked, but
No,
I
no.
think worth talking about it. For a long time, people had routers to connect to their service provider, and then they had IPS, IDS. They had inline prevention or detection. These were separate functions to find a threat on their network, right? But now firewalls, they can do all those things in one place.
Yeah.
And very important for technicians and for network engineers to be able to look at packet captures, look at the traffic that is going on the wire, and just pick it apart. Say, this portion of it, I know what it is. This, I don't know. This doesn't look good to me. This lines up with this announcement that was out there. 0-day attack that they said does this. This is looking something like a threat. You know, and for you, in able to be confident in your observation, it only comes from practice.
Hmm.
So I would say something that I don't see in many people, and it's very important to actually add to your toolbox or be comfortable with, is actually using Wireshark and other tools that are coming with firewalls to be able to look at live traffic and say what's what.
Yeah, absolutely. I used to go on, what website is it? It's some military geek thing. I can't remember what it's called right now. I'll put in a link in the description, but it's basically a catalog of tools like that. That's where I found Wireshark. And it's, geez, I can't remember what it's called, but yeah, you can go on there and it's like, here's a free antivirus tool. Here's something you can use to like just do packet scanning. Here's another tool you can do to analyze like ARP captures, like these kind of things.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting being able to just go onto this website, and they've got a whole list of these tools that they approve for technicians to use. Just download them for free. They've got trials, whatever. And
Yeah.
I was able to use those tools. I remember there was a point where when I was first starting the business 6 years ago, probably. So I started 7 years ago, but 6 years ago when I was starting to really go and fix computers for people, I had a list of like 25 different pieces of software for Mac and 25 different pieces of software for Windows. And
Mm-hmm.
if I was doing a Windows tune-up, I would go through and I would run all these things like Glasswire and Malwarebytes and all of these other programs have been bought up by these big companies now. And
Yeah.
I would just run these programs and I would be like, okay, cool. Let me see what goes on when I'm running this stuff. And using those different tools, like you said, it kind of nudges you in the direction where you end up expanding your knowledge, and you're not relying on this one little system. Like I remember probably 8 years ago, before I started doing this professionally. Maybe I'm mixing up the years. I'm not good with time, but I think the Cisco RV230, is that the little box thing? Is it the 320 or the 230?
Not sure.
It's like a super cheap budget Cisco firewall, and it was like the only thing I could rely on, because like I couldn't find anything else. But it did secure VPN connections, it did DDoS protection, it had all of these like little tiny things that you would look for in an
Mhm.
affordable package, and there was
Yeah.
nothing like that at the time.
Yeah.
Maybe there was, maybe I was ignorant, because I was like a 19-year-old kid scrounging around. But yeah, I remember using that and then having to combine it with all of this other stuff. Like, see, now I forget even the firewall stuff. This is the problem, man. I'm not doing too much technical stuff anymore. So, what's the firewall that's free? I keep thinking free DNS, but that's not it. It's
No, no, no.
Perf.
OpenBSD there are many Linux-based great firewalls
Is there a
that
perf one? I
uh,
feel like that's another one.
well, you can use what is that one called? pfSense.
That's it. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So yeah, like I would have a box running pfSense, and there's a couple other little firewall things you can have running. And yeah, but like you said, I think that nowadays the most important tool is your brain. You know, I think that's definitely very important.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that about does it, man. Do you have anything else that you want to touch on, or you think people should know about that we've kind of sparked
No, I
here?
think actually we went uh, over many common questions for someone who likes to start or they're already doing a little and they want to do more. So I think we pretty much went over all the more important topics.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Cool. Is there anything that you want to promote or anything that personally you have going on that people can check out?
Well, personally, I wouldn't have put it out there yet, but since we're doing this now, people can actually look me up on LinkedIn, try to connect with me, and keep an eye out. I'm going to release a series of videos that I'm putting together for people who are working as network administrators and want to take it a level up, be a network engineer, or be a better network administrator. And I'm putting together these videos. When I started was meant to be for the old CCNA route switch, but the certification all changed last February, and there's no route switch anymore, which it's kind of sad. It's going to make people with CCNA certification less hands-on and just, people have some information. It's still not that I want to talk it down, and only time would show how they would actually fare in the job market and how much they can actually do when it comes to their work environments. But again, because of all the changes to the certification, and I'm planning to keep these videos for free, I would put them on a YouTube channel. I would announce it through my LinkedIn because I don't have that YouTube channel set up yet. And we are working on the name. Most likely, I'm going to call it certification, which is a mix of being certified and being a wizard at work, which is you definitely need. And once I put the videos out, it's going to cover everything from fundamental information of TCP/IP stack all the way to common things that you would actually encounter in your day-to-day. And I'm very excited about it. I have some of the videos recorded already. Some have to change because of the change in certification landscape recently. But I would be very excited to share that with our audience.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, let me know whenever you launch it, and we'll put the links to Certification and the YouTube channel, whatever you end up naming it, down below. And I'll make sure to link to your LinkedIn right now. I have one other question for you that you kind of sparked for me, which is, do you think the conglomeration of these big companies like Cisco kind of scooping up everybody and coming up with their own course loads, do you think that will be damaging for technicians in the future? Because as an employer and as a technician, I agree with you. I actually think that they are making a bit of a mistake by taking out the more hands-on stuff in the field. Do you think that this is something that's going to continue? Do you think that people are going to have to reach out to experts like yourself and learn more hands-on things that way? Or what do you think the future kind of looks like with this?
Well, I think they're kind of catching up with the market.
Mm-hmm.
You can't really blame them for doing it the way they're doing it. You earlier you asked me what's the next big thing, and I said automation. But if I want to name another thing, if you were asking me next few big things, I would have said after that software-defined networking. So they've taken out that portion of it, and now they're adding more SD-WAN, SD access, things like that.
Yeah.
And it's understandable. People are moving away from using CLI the way we used to learn things, and now everything has a GUI and things like that, which is fine, but they can break, and then you would really need to know how to do it on the CLI.
I've
The
never
point
heard of a
is,
GUI breaking. Never heard of that. It's never happened to me. I've never had to
yeah,
flash a firmware.
yeah. The point is, they're making they made some good changes too. That we didn't go into details of it. Now you can get specialist certificates that are just a single exam, and they, as the name says, they make you specialize in one thing.
Mm-hmm.
So you can go and be specialized in routing and be specialized in automation and things like that. And they're all great. But one thing that I want people to not forget, if you're about to start and you don't know where to start, Network Plus or CCN is still the way to go because you want to learn the fundamentals. Don't worry about what this vendor platform is offering me versus the other one. You are not there yet, and it's not even useful information for you to learn because they're going to change when they release their next generation. So don't worry about those things. But value wise, getting Cisco certification in job market holds water more than everyone else. Also does Juniper. Also, if you talk about firewalls, does FortiGate and Palo Alto. So there are all these big players. But if you really want to learn the fundamentals, just go for those entry level certifications, learn something, and then see what actually interests you. You would be passionate about something that you know. Think of it, you would go to a party and you meet someone for the first time and you find something in common, whether it being sports or cars or travel or whatever is the topic. You would find that thing in common with them because you've both been passionate about it.
Yeah.
Now you can share information. You would create that passion once you have information. You cannot be passionate about something you don't really know what it is.
Yeah.
So put the time in, learn the fundamentals. You're gonna develop that interest in that topic, and then from there, it would be very hard for you to go wrong. Whatever you learn is gonna be just another added tool to your toolbox, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I think the best places for people to start, and you can add on to this or correct me if I'm wrong, CompTIA A plus if you're totally fresh, learn that. Level 2, get your Network Plus, and then after that, I think you'll know at that point. You know, I would also recommend if you're going to be studying for CompTIA A plus and you're going to be studying for CompTIA Network Plus, you should be looking at YouTube channels like Network Chuck, Eli the Computer Guy. Maybe you have a couple of other ones.
Yeah, I would say David Bumble. He's amazing. He has courses on GNS3 Academy. That's where he started to get popular 4 or 5 years ago. But now he runs daily videos on his YouTube channel, on his LinkedIn. He's extremely helpful. I've seen his interactions with people. He's always there. It's not just someone looking after his social media. And he offers a lot of free courses. Go to udemy.com and look David Bumble. And when you see his courses, he has a lot of free courses. And he's great at explaining things. He doesn't make assumptions. He does it for people who don't know anything. And yeah, that's another great resource. Obviously, if you're going to pay, I would recommend signing up for CBT Nuggets.
Yeah.
If also if you're going to pay, I would say better value for someone like myself is O'Reilly. It used to be called Safari Books, but now Safari Books was bought by O'Reilly. So now you can get all the books and many video trainings, self-paced trainings for $40 a month.
Yeah. Yeah, I think CBT Nuggets is huge. I know so many people in the field that have gone from zero to hero with them. Yeah, awesome, man. Yeah, I think that's perfect. I think that's going to give people a good start because I know the biggest, scariest thing you can do is get started. And I think if you just follow Network Chuck, you follow David Bumble, you follow these people, I think that what's going to happen is you're going to get sucked into it. You know what I mean? You're going to look at the comments. They're going to talk about stuff. You're taking your Network Plus. You're going to take the test. You're going to meet people. You know that. Well, probably not with COVID, but you know what I mean. You're going to get exposure to these things. Like you said, you're going to meet people who have that passion as well, whether it's just online or in a forum, whatever. And you're going to kind of blow up with this stuff. And I think that if you look, one thing I always tell people that start with me that are getting a little bit frustrated on something is look at yourself 3 months ago, or just wait until you're 3 months from where you are now. Because if you really dig in and you dedicate a half hour a day or 2 hours a day or even 15 minutes a day,
that's very important.
You're going to be so far ahead of people. It's crazy. And after 3 months, you're going to look back and go, I can't believe I used to struggle with VLANs. Or and you're creating the most complex. You're setting up a 5-person business with 10 VLANs before you know it. You know.
I would say out of everything that we said, And I'm very happy that you brought it up because I totally forgot about touching that point. I'm very happy you said it. Daily uh, practice. It doesn't really matter if it's 5 minutes. I promise you, more often than not, you're going to be interested in what you're reading and you do more than 5 minutes. But even if it's 5 minutes, make sure you're doing it every day because even one day gap would, the very least, would break the chain and would put you into your laziness and, just brushing it off and saying, "Oh, I'm gonna do 10 minutes in 2 days to cover for 5 minutes for every day." Don't do that. It's a trap. Just do 5-10 minutes a day, and you're gonna be very, very knowledgeable in a very short amount of time.
And even again, like those videos we talked about, Eli the computer guy and these other folks, like Network Chuck for me is the easiest because he's entertaining. You know what I mean? Like now I'm sucked in, like he's got his wife and all this kind of stuff. But like it's just so easy to just turn on one of his videos, and then 5 minutes later I'm like, fine, I'll look into fucking this other thing that I'm supposed to look at, and then you're in the wormhole, right? And then an hour's gone by, and you're like, oh shit, I'm late for dinner or whatever. So yeah, I think the daily thing is definitely very important. But that's awesome, Reza. Again, I think this is going to be really valuable for a lot of people just getting started. I want to thank you again for coming on today. It means a lot. And I hope this video gives everybody a good foundation to start learning more about networking on, and it kind of helps you with your career and developing. And even if you're further along in your career, I hope it kind of helps you get a little bit more excited about what's going on day to day. So in closing, as usual, if you could please leave a like on the video, it really helps us out. And if you want to see more videos like this, then please subscribe. If you have a suggestion for a future video, please leave a comment below or send us an email at techtips@umbrellaitservices.ca. And I hope you all have a great day, and we'll see you soon.